they would have done themselves a favor Saturday night if they had done this. And I've been in games where it's happened before, where an official will have a call, I'll have a look, or I'll make a call and they'll have a look, and they'll come running over, and it's kind of code like, tell me what you saw. And immediately, man, your antennas go up like, okay, what did you see? And
Okay.
then you talk about it. And a lot of times you just, tell the referee, hey, wave it off. You'll see him wave the flag, wave the penalty marker. And, usually he'll make an announcement like, there's no call for holding on number 78 of the offense. And, it's third down, fourth down, whatever. And you put the ball down and you go. But that's not what happened Saturday night.
All right, what is going on, everyone? Welcome to WreckTalk. Special treat today. We have 20-year SEC official veteran Gus Morris here. He's actually written a book. So if you like what you hear here today, getting some of the inside scoop from official, Lord knows we've all seen calls we didn't like and thought, man, I wish someone who's an actual expert that doesn't work for ESPN could talk about this kind of freely. His book is Saturdays Down South. He talks about everything from experiences with Urban Meyer to experiences with Steve Spurrier. Have you ever wondered how they get into a game? What does all that look like? How do they get out of the game? What do they talk about when they have pregame meetings? All that's in the book. I can't recommend it enough. I've had the opportunity to read it, and it was an absolute blast. Gus, thank you so much for coming on the show today. How are you, sir? Hi, Rec again for a little interjection. He's actually a 31-year veteran SEC official, and the book's name is Saturday in the South. Do your research, and you'll never be a dummy like Rec again.
I'm good.
Walk us through the review process as an official. Who goes and looks at it? Who's talking to who? Where? What does that look like? Green here. 31 years officiating football. I'm sure there's not much you hadn't seen, right?
I've seen a lot. My first game was in September of 1990, and my last game was in December of 2020.
All right, so you've been out about 4 years now. So how are you liking not calling and just kind of watching as a fan these days?
I watch the game probably so much different than the average fan. I look at the officials and how they're doing as far as bringing in balls and, doing measurements and things like that. But as we were talking before we started this, I have, made the decision but one of the reasons I did what I'm getting ready to tell you is after I read my book, I felt like it had value in recruiting people to get into officiating for the right reasons and maybe hang around, because there's not enough people that are staying in it. And
Sure.
You can't do it for the money. You cannot do it for the money. You got to do it because you like the sport and you want to stay involved. And it does develop some really good people skills. But so I've started, back to officiating junior high and varsity high school football. So I'm having a blast. There's no replay. There's no high definition television. I'm not as fleet of foot as I used to be. So, you just put the ball down and you play, and I'm having a really good time.
Well, yeah, and people usually don't think about it. Look, it's kind of like, I guess, complaints for baggage at the airport. No one's there and happy. Anytime someone noticed Gus when he was officiating, I'm pretty sure it was because something happened they didn't like, right? So I guess the name of the game in officiating is, if no one noticed me today, that was probably a pretty good day for you. He was a heads linesman, and I want to talk about first the Virginia Tech Miami game. Then we'll talk about UGA Texas. Two really controversial calls. This is kind of a crazy season of college football where it seems like every week we kind of have two or three things I haven't seen before, right? So just to kind of recap, in the Miami-Virginia Tech game comes down to the wire. Hail Mary ball. And before we even get into that, I'm sure, Gus, before a play like that, if you have an opportunity to talk as a crew, you're talking, hey, we know it's going to be a ball thrown to the end zone. Kind of, this is the position we want to be in. Can you kind of talk us through what that looks like from an officiating perspective?
Well, when you've got, with experience, what they're going to do. I mean, Virginia Tech was so far out. I think they were about, I don't know exactly, they were 40 plus yards from the goal line. They're not, unless you're Jeff Collins, you're not going to run a draw play from there.
Right. Yeah.
But they're going to, they're going to throw it in the back of the end zone, and they're going to be bodies all over the place. So as my position, I'm not going to be really involved in that play too much. I'm going to be watching line of scrimmage blocking and stuff like that. But there's 3 deep officials.
Right. The field judge, back judge, and side judge, right?
Correct. And, if I'm one of those officials, I want that play right in front of me. I want to make the call. And that's the way all of them, should feel. And I think most of them, for the most part, feel and approach it that way. But that they've only, it was, I think before the guy even threw the ball, if I remember right, the clock had counted down to 0.
Right. Yeah, that was going to be the last play.
So that was it, unless there was a defensive foul or something like that. And so the ball gets thrown up in the end zone, and man, it just starts unraveling.
So the ball's thrown in the end zone before a call's made by the officials. Miami didn't do those officials any favors whatsoever. They hit the lights, they start celebrating. Then the call comes in of a caught ball. Now, I'm not an expert, Gus is, but to me, the call on the field being a touchdown seems pivotally important into how that played out. From the replay, from what I saw, I don't know how you could really determine what happened. Kind of walk us through that and what your thoughts were on all that.
So we need to back up even more. So
okay.
the back judge is in pretty good position. He's on the end line in the end zone. He doesn't really have, he could have been, he doesn't want to be too close to the action, but he probably could have been a little bit closer. But there was never a call. I mean, there was never a signal of a touchdown.
Okay.
Even when the Miami kid got up off the ground with the ball, nobody had signaled touchdown yet that I could see. And so I wrote some notes down about it when I first saw it, and I thought my first criticism was somebody needed to come in and make a call. There was, an official should have stepped in and sold it, gone up, touchdown, and it would have changed the outcome of that play, I think, a lot.
So how that happened with how long it took to make a call was less than ideal, I guess. Maybe
that was really no, that was not ideal at all. Somebody should have stepped in. So that would have been the field judge, because that's where the side of the field that it was thrown on. He should have been closing in on it also, and somebody needed to make a call and make it and stick it.
Okay, so if you're the field judge and it's the back judge's call and he's not calling it, you're saying you're running in as high as you can hold the touchdown and selling the call. Okay, and that's probably something no one's probably talked about with this, is just from the official's point of view. Took a long time, no one really sold it, which signals to everyone watching, right, these guys are not confident or they didn't really know what happened. Or that would be, as a fan, me watching, kind of how it feels.
Yeah. So I just was, they would have done themselves a huge service to go in and sell it. And if it's wrong, replay can go in and they'll fix it.
Right.
But on a play like that is as big a play as you can have in a ball game. It's the last play of the game that's going to decide. I mean, it is a game deciding play, you got to make that call.
Yeah, that's a tough one. I'm sure that they met afterward and talked about that. I think you have a post-game meeting, right, where you talk about the game and maybe what you would have liked to have done a little differently. So okay, they do finally signal touchdown, and now you've got some chaos. And I'm sure as an official you got to know, okay, this is not going to be good. We're going to talk about in the next game you might get stuff thrown at you, things start unraveling. And they go to review. Now,
they're going to review that play anyway. I mean, there's a play like that, last play of the game, it's a 99.9% chance it's going to get looked at. Unless the guy just running and catches it and runs out of the back of the end zone or something like that.
Right.
But that was a free for all. They're going to look at that.
Yeah, if he's untouched and he's got 2 foot, a yard inside, you're not going to review it. Walk us through the review process as an official. Who goes and looks at it? Who's talking to who? Where? What does that look like?
Well, so obviously the referee goes over and looks at the monitor, and he takes what we used to call a scribe with him, so that if there's, it wasn't in this particular situation, but let's say that any other situation, you've got to know down, distance, yard line, clock's going to start on the snap, or the ready for play. There's a lot of things that the referee is listening to, so things that he can get written down on a piece of paper is less he has to remember in the heat of the battle. And so he is talking with typically there are 2 replay officials in the booth at the stadium, and he is talking to the guy that's working the monitor. Typically there's a replay official, and then there's a like a technician or an observer. I forgot what they call the guy, but he's kind of charting plays and all that kind of stuff. And then he helps bring up all the views that the production truck outside the stadium is sending him, or what he has available. And that play, the Virginia Tech Miami game, I don't think there was but like 2 views of that play.
Yeah, there wasn't much to look at.
Wasn't a lot. There wasn't a lot to look at, and so we used to kind of have a saying that if 20 guys or 20 people are sitting in a bar, and if all 20 of them don't say, "Oh, that's a touchdown," and it's split down the middle, you just go with the call on the field. It's got to be a unanimous, pretty quick decision. And you want to go into that process and get in and out of replay as quick as you can. You want to get out of there in a minute and a half and be done with it. The longer you go, it just does not look, the optics don't look good from a fan standpoint.
Right.
And from what I saw, the player, if I remember right, the kid from Virginia Tech went up. Everybody went up. His left foot came down in bounds. His right foot came down in bounds, and then he went down on his rear end. And I think he had the ball in his left arm.
I think so.
And once he hits the ground, man, it's over. The process of the catch is over. And then you see a Miami player reach in there and strip the ball out of it. And, they claimed that the ball was loose my understanding is they claimed that the ball was loose when the guy was going down. That's the only thing that could have been.
Now, who's
that he didn't have firm control of it, and that the guy that stripped it was actually out of bounds. So when he made contact with the ball, it killed it. And so it was a dead ball. So the play's over with a loose ball. So there's no catch. It's how they ruled it.
So when you say they, are you talking about when you say they ruled it? The
replay officials.
Okay. Yeah.
So go back to the thing. I kind of rushed through the thing on the sideline. So the referee can see, it's a little small monitor.
Yeah.
So the referee can see the action, but he has no input on what's going to be the outcome of the replay.
Mm,
Now there's one more level to this. There's a video center, I think in Charlotte is where the ACC video center is.
right.
And there are people looking at a monitor and they've got headphones on and they're talking with the replay official at the stadium. So it's kind of a committee that's going through the replay process.
So who makes the final decision on what the result of the play is going to be in a replay?
Technically, the replay official at the stadium is supposed to make it,
Okay.
but
Okay.
that don't always happen.
All right. So it's kind of a decision by committee, but at the end of the day, it's supposed to be the replay official at the stadium.
That's right.
Okay.
That's right. But I just didn't see enough irrefutable video evidence to overturn that call. But had the official or both officials gone in and sold that touchdown, I think I don't know that this would have ever happened.
Interesting.
It was like nobody made a call. I'm like, somebody has got to make a call, you know.
Yeah.
And I don't know those officials. You know, I there are some officials, and I'm not saying it's these guys at all because I don't know them.
Right.
And there are situations where you get into a play where, let's say, all of a sudden you've got a ball loose on the field, and you're not sure how it got there. You just leave it alone. I mean, you don't make a call, you don't do anything, because if you kill it, here's a better example. Let's say you've got a defensive back and a wide receiver running down the sideline, and there's all these feet,
Right.
and you see a foot step out of bounds, and it's not, and you can't tell which leg what human it belongs to.
Right.
You're better off of not making a call out of bounds, because you can't fix that.
Right. You can
If
always go back on replay and correct it.
Right.
But if you blow
Right.
it dead, there's no recourse.
There's no recourse.
What-
And that happened to a friend of mine out at Texas A&M, and and it followed him the rest of his career.
Man, that's tough. You make 99% of your calls are great, but one can kind of haunt you. I mean, we probably don't give refs enough credit for just how difficult the job that they have is. But it's interesting you bring up that example, because that's actually what the ACC office came back, I believe, a day after the game. If I remember right, they were saying, well, Miami player was out of bounds, and then he was the first to touch the ball, so that killed the play there. But to me, I'll tell you my opinion. You tell me what you think. It seemed like an ad hoc rationalization for kind of a crapshoot. What do you think about how the ACC office handled it?
I think that you give anybody enough time, you can come up with something that sounds pretty good.
Yeah. Oh, George said that. Let's go with that. That makes some kind of line of sense. We'll go with that.
But I'm serious. I still go back to the covering officials. If we'd have had a real strong touchdown signal, it would have been really hard for replay to come in and overturn that.
Yeah.
I think because there was a little sense of indecision, that I don't see how they come in and say, well, this is they can't see anything any better than what we saw on TV.
Well, and I don't think we saw anything on TV or in the different angles that was any better than that official saw that was in front of it. I guess it was the back judge.
Yeah.
But yeah. Well, interesting. Really cool to get an expert's opinion on that. Someone that's been in that position before. I'm sure you've had hundreds of different calls, or well, you weren't in the back of it, but I'm sure you've had a lot of different calls where there was game-ending decisions.
I mean, I've had some interesting calls, and I had one down at LSU one night. Back in the Leonard Fournette days, and
Okay.
there was a play on the sideline, and it was a situation where there was a ball comes down, or runner comes out to my side, gets hit, ball comes out, goes straight down to the ground. And there's 4 or 5 bodies all over the place. And I see the running back reach back in there and get the ball. And then the visiting team, I don't remember who it was, came in and fell on it, but I ruled it dead as soon as he touched it because his legs were out of bounds.
Mm-hmm.
So it killed it right there. Well, they looked and they looked and they looked, and they were getting ready to announce it as the play stands as called on the field. Well, that's not what you want as an official. You want it confirmed,
Right.
and so they were getting ready to. The referee was getting ready to take the headphones off and step back and make the call, and then all of a sudden he got a call from the replay official, and the production truck sent him one more view from a handheld camera up the sideline, and you could see him out of bounds. You could see him reach in and grab the ball, and so it ended up being confirmed. And so you kind of puff out your chest a little bit. Think to yourself, "Ooh, I got lucky on that one."
Yeah, thank God they had that angle. Well, since you're talking about SEC play, let's go into this more recent game, UGA at Texas.
Oh yeah.
I can say I've never seen this happen before. I'm not saying it hasn't, where we've picked up a flag on a PI like that. Just to kind of recap, seems like questionable PI call. Wide receiver has his arms full extended on a DB, but they're kind of hand fighting on what looks to be like a little curl route on the outside. Texas DB sits on it, picks it off, takes it back, and it's ruled pass interference on the defense. So pass interference on Texas, and the crowd in Texas goes crazy, starts throwing bottles on hundreds and hundreds of bottles on the field. We have to suspend play. And this is what makes it interesting. It seems like that gave that crew time to come together. They talked about it, and then I don't know if I'm using the right terminology, but they picked the flag up. It wasn't like you can't overturn, I don't think, a penalty like that, but they picked the flag up. What makes this, to me, seem problematic, particularly for officials, is it seems like it sets a precedent that if you get a call you don't like at your home stadium, we need to unload whatever's in our hands onto the field, and we might get a different outcome. How do you see this situation that happened in Texas against UGA?
Well, first of all, it doesn't happen often, but there will be calls during the game, and officials will come together, and they would have done themselves a favor Saturday night if they had done this. And I've been in games where it's happened before, where an official will have a call, I'll have a look, or I'll make a call and they'll have a look, and they'll come running over, and it's kind of code like, tell me what you saw. And immediately, man, your antennas go up like, okay, what did you see? And
Okay.
then you talk about it. And a lot of times you just, tell the referee, hey, wave it off. You'll see him wave the flag, wave the penalty marker. And, usually he'll make an announcement like, there's no call for holding on number 78 of the offense. And, it's third down, fourth down, whatever. And you put the ball down and you go. But that's not what happened Saturday night. And if you go back and look at that play, as you mentioned, the defensive back has got the receiver in front of him, and they're both going downfield. The ball's thrown, and at the last minute, the offensive receiver starts turning back to the inside. The defensive back has already seen the ball coming. He steps to his right, and he's 2 or 3 feet away from the offensive receiver when he catches the ball.
Right.
Now, The field judge who made the call is looking through the back of the defensive player.
Yep.
And I think he rushed his decision. If he'd have held off of it, and I mean, it doesn't matter when you drop the flag, as long as you get it on the right spot. I mean, you don't want it, 10 seconds later or anything like that. But
Right.
an additional second is not going to make that much different, and it just gives you a little bit extra time to process what you've seen. And so I think he would like to have he'd like to have that back.
Hmm.
But the back judge, once that ball is thrown, his receivers that he's responsible for, unless they've got each other by the face mask, there's no reason to even deal with them anymore. So you shift your your eyes over to where the ball's going and where the other receivers are. And he probably would have had the best look because he's going to be looking, through the players. He's going to see the defensive back. He's going to see the offensive receiver, and he would have the best look to make a call on a push off or a hold or anything like that. And that didn't happen either.
Hmm.
So again, I think that the field judge could have been a little bit more certain about his call, the way his body language was when he went into the referee and reported it. He'd have gone in and said, I got pass interference on the defense and sold the call, kind of like we were talking about in the Virginia Tech Miami game. And then that didn't happen. Well, as you mentioned, it was against the home team, and it was in that end of the field where, it was out there in front of God and everybody. And what they saw, just, was what everybody on TV ended up seeing.
Right.
That it just wasn't there. I mean, when I saw it, I'm thinking there's just nothing there. There's absolutely nothing there, particularly since the offensive player hadn't even turned around to look for the ball yet.
Yeah.
I mean, he was.
Seems to be that, and I'm not an official, just from a bunch of laymen like myself, if it were anything, it would have been offensive pass interference. But it seems like with the way that they were fighting going down the field, you just leave the flag in your pocket.
Yeah.
So then we get bottles thrown on the field. Now, as an official, I'm certain, right, you've had to stop play for something like that, a fight on the field that's particularly bad, you have to stop play. What happens when you have to stop play? Who makes that call? Walk us through that process.
Well, so that is, that this was really super bad. This was like the Ole Miss at Tennessee a couple of years ago when
The
they're just
mustard bottle.
throwing, it was terrible. Well, that's a game management problem. The officials, I suspect that the officials, talked amongst themselves and says, hey, get in the middle of the field where they can't get to us. And, they're the coaches are getting their players, to the sideline and stuff like that. And then they're trying to, game management at that point is trying to get the situation under control.
So who is game management? There's people whose sole job is maintaining order, or what does that look like?
Well, I mean, it's the people that work for Texas and the people that, put the orange and white shakers in the seats and set up security and I mean there's hundreds and hundreds of people involved in that.
So that's the University of Texas.
There's one game day coordinator that that handles all that, but that's there's nothing that the officials can do to like have an unsportsmanlike conduct on Texas for that. I mean, that's out of the realm of the official's responsibility.
You're just trying to protect yourself at that point. Let's get away from the stands and not eat a bottle to the forehead.
Correct. And so, and that's going to take some time. So, as far as what all is going on, it looks like there's, they do huddle up. but I have no idea what they're talking about. Um, I think there's three things that could have happened. Um, I have no idea what that was. The official might have thought, what, that was a real crappy call. And
Yeah.
now that I've had time to think about it, it's just not right. I don't. And I will say this: that call was not changed because Texas was throwing those bottles out on the field.
Okay.
That ain't gonna happen. Um, but the time delay afforded the opportunity for these other variables to start coming into the equation to change the call. And so that's the only way that it affected it. But the official could have said, I think I'm wrong,
Yeah.
and he owned it. And so that's one possibility. Another possibility, I guarantee you, on the jumbotrons, they had that play in loop,
Oh
just
yeah.
over and over and over and over. And it could have been that one of the officials, without being obvious, cut his eyes up there and saw the play
Right.
and said, "Look, man, that's no, we can't. No wonder they're throwing balls out here."
Well, I know they
um,
were because Sark kept losing his mind. And I'm sure you know the temperament of coaches if you work these games a lot. Seems to be like someone that doesn't usually come unglued. Is it
yeah,
ever your experience where like, okay, this coach is usually pretty even tempered and he's losing it, and it kind of makes you question yourself a little bit.
yeah, yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
I mean, it does. I mean, but I mean, and if you're wrong, I mean, it's. I'm telling you, if you're wrong, you can't hide it. Just go ahead and own it, and they either gonna keep you or fire you, and there's no sense in trying to hide it because they're gonna find the truth eventually.
Right.
Um, so it could have been that one of the officials, saw it up there and said, we need to change this. And then the third possibility, we talked about replaying the Virginia Tech Miami game. Replay could have sent something down because they got the same ODOs, the communication system that the officials are wearing, so they can talk to each other, during the course of the game. Um, I doubt that's what happened because they try to really leave the calls on the field. There are situations, and then one other thing that kind of that I thought about after all that time transpired. So with the interception, it was run back a long way down to the other 9-yard line,
Right.
and then they bring it back, and it's going to be first and 10. I think they were outside the
It's like on the
anyway.
25 or so. It would have been like on the
Yeah,
25 for
it's
Georgia.
first and whatever because it's spot foul,
Right.
and so so they I don't know that they ever even marked the ball ready for play. I think they just kind of they made the announcement that they put the ball down, and I don't know if they I don't remember if they marked the ball ready for play because it would have been it being a change of possession, the game clock would have started till the snap, if the pass interference had stayed. Um, and if it had stayed, they would have had to have gone back and figured out how much time transpired between the catch or the interception and the time he was tackled on the 9-yard line and add that back to the game clock.
Lot going on there. Yeah. So how much
Yeah.
now that we reverse it, when does the clock start? Does the clock what's the time on the clock when the clock starts? Man, it's got my head spinning.
Yeah. And you got 1,000 bottles coming at you, and you got coaches going freaking berserk. It's like working calculus problems in a baby nursery, and every one of them is screaming.
Yeah, get
Um,
things thrown at you. So is
but
is it your opinion that okay, we got the right call and a
yeah,
very, arduous path to the right call?
yeah, yeah, absolutely. Yeah,
Okay.
they got it right. And and everybody involved in the game from an officiating standpoint and replay staff and that sort of thing, everybody wants to get it right. Um,
Sure.
this game was just unfortunately one of those where everybody knew that the officials were there, and it will be a game that they'll never forget, and it'll go in the bad column.
Yeah, maybe one of them will write a book like you, and we'll get the conversation they had when they put that out. And I will say, I don't think many people realize how selective. Like, if you're an SEC official, the path to becoming an SEC official like Gus did, or these guys that made these calls, it is extraordinarily unlikely anyone would ever get there. I mean, these guys go to camps, they do all this stuff. It's not like they just throw anyone out there, right? So these are the best of the best of the best. In fact, it might be as selective as making a roster on a college football team. I don't know, but that also wouldn't surprise me.
Well, I think when I started, the entire SEC staff, and you carried 4 or 5 extras because somebody get hurt, and you
Right.
got to be able to fill positions and stuff like that, or people have natural conflicts. Like my son went to Mississippi State, and my daughter went to Ole Miss. While they were in school, I didn't work those games.
Right.
So they have to have, they either switch me out to another crew or put somebody in my spot. But I think when I started, there were 72, there were 71 other guys. And we handled all the SEC games.
Oh, so it's
But
much more selective than making a roster on a D1 team.
yeah,
I mean, it's just numbers wise, it's got to be. So there's of all the
but they
people
were.
that officiate. Go ahead.
But I was just going to say that they you really can't complain too loud either. I mean, you're very fortunate to be where you are. I can't tell you how fortunate I felt to have had the opportunity to experience all the things that I did over those years. And I was a pretty decent official. I had, I've blown some calls,
Sure.
and blew one really big one. And we were able to get that one right. But you at the same time, you were still pretty humble towards the leadership of the conference. I mean, we were independent contractors. We weren't employees of the league or anything like that. But um, the one of our older supervisors, a guy named Bobby Gaston, who he hired me, and he trained us and did all that, got us all the information stuff, signed the games and everything. He told me one day, Gus, he said, if you don't like it, I got 1,000 applications right behind you. I can go.
Man, that's some
And,
pressure, isn't it?
yeah. But again, you go at it with the right attitude. It is absolutely amazing. And if you've got a high level of emotional intelligence, and you are present and you keep your eyes open, it's so interesting, all the stuff that goes on around the stadium.
Oh yeah.
You're out there not to belabor LSU, but you get out there on the field sometimes, and it's just smell after smell after smell. I mean, it's grilled sausages, it's roasted peanuts, it's cotton candy. All this stuff just comes. You're starving when you get through with the game because those people are cooking all around the stadium.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
And
And
so it's
look, guys, if you want to hear all about a collective 31 years of experience, go to Saturdays in the South. I think it's thefootballbook.com,
yeah,
correct? You can go there,
yeah.
you can get it, and you can get a whole plethora of different experiences. Can't recommend that book enough. Before we get out of here, I did want to talk about this because I'm not even sure on the rules. There's been a lot of coaches, maybe not a lot. There's been some coaches that have had some things to say about the officiating. I don't know if there's a fine associated with that. I know it's highly looked down upon by, I think, college football collectively. But I know Kirby Smart came out right after the game to an ESPN reporter and basically said they tried to steal that game from us. And I'm paraphrasing, and no one believed in us, something to that effect. And I want to say Jeff Brom of Louisville complain about the officiating. Do you know what, like, how that's handled or what the expectation is, or are there fines associated with saying things about calls?
Yeah, I wish I had. I thought I had a rule book sitting here. So there's a section in the beginning of the rule book that's all it deals with is ethics
Okay.
and coaching ethics and coaches' behavior and player behavior and guidelines for officials and stuff like that. And in the NCAA rule book, there is a section that describes what you're talking about and coaches not saying things about officials.
Right.
I mean, it's happened in the past, and some people, you know, um, some people will push the envelope a little bit. As far as anything happening, that would be a Greg Sankey decision out
Oh,
of the
the
league
commissioner.
office. Yeah,
Wow.
he would make he would make that decision. I I mean, it was a ugly situation, and it'd be hard for me not to comment on it either in the heat of the moment.
Sure.
But I mean, he didn't call anybody out by name, but I mean, they'll weigh all that, but they're gonna have to. I think the fine and the fact that I've heard that they're trying to identify, the people that were involved in throwing the bottles and stuff out there and terminating their, opportunity to as students to go watch games and stuff like that in person. That's pretty big.
Hmm.
That may cause people to think in the future about doing something like that. But I think the message that I would be trying to send right now from a league office would be those bottles did not change that was not the deciding factor in changing that call.
Well, I'm glad you
Because I
said that.
know I know it wasn't that.
Yeah, no one would know more than Gus Morris, and that's why I wanted to bring him on because look, I'm just some idiotic YouTuber. I don't know what I'm talking about. So hey, let me go find someone who does. And I think as far as throwing stuff on the field, I think you can be banned from any NCAA sporting event as well, and not just like Bobby Dodd if you're a Tech fan or Sanford. So yeah, you might want to think about, is it worth um not being able to go to sporting events to voice your disdain by moving your arm a few inches and throwing a bottle on a field. I mean, it's just not
Yeah,
worth
but
it.
I mean, there's so much more dynamics involved in it. I mean, from a cultural standpoint, the entitlement that some people feel right now, they feel like they've got a right to do that. And
Well, they think their emotions are important to other people, and they're really not. I mean,
no, they're not. But it was I mean, it's a game that those guys will never forget. Ultimately, they got it right. It was just really, really ugly the way that they got there, and it left so much, room for second guessing, and I think of course, I'm not signing the checks and making the big decisions, but I really think that a strong statement from the conference office that was a little bit more supportive of the officials and described what had happened in more detail, along with the disciplinary actions and fines against Texas. I
mhm,
think would have, and something else may come, but I think that would have been a little bit more helpful
for
down the
sure.
road.
Well, Gus, thank you so much. And if you want to hear about some of Gus's experience with the SEC office, with officiating SEC title games, go to thefootballbook.com. It's Saturdays in the South, and you can read all about it. And Gus, thank you so much for coming on, man. I really appreciate it. And maybe we can do this a little bit more regular. Anytime we have one of these calls, we can get an expert's opinion on it.
Yeah. I enjoy doing it, and I'll try to tell you it like it is. I mean, I've still got friends out there, so I'm not going to burn those bridges. But
Yeah.
but if I can enlighten the people, the folks on your channel, I'd be more than happy to do that.
All right. Well, thank you, Gus. And hey, guys, stay tuned. We got a lot more coming up. I think next I've got a video coming out on I don't sports bet and why you shouldn't either. Why you probably not going to beat a coin flip. So be looking out for that. And we'll talk to you guys later.